Chris Skelzer here with
Matt Howell.
On this episode of The First Run, Matt and I are going to discuss Borat Subsequent MovieFilm. That's right, Sacha Baron Cohen filmed a Borat sequel basically when none of us were paying attention, didn't even know. I think there were little teases and little things that came out this past year, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is done, and it's been dropped on Amazon Prime, and we're going to tell you about it. We're also going to continue our we're going to continue our makeshift, kind of on-the-fly horror anthology run with the Mortuary Collection. And then finally, we're going to do a horror edition of TFR Libs, our fill-in-the-blank game, but all focused on horror because, Matt, this episode will post the day before Halloween. So I know you're excited about that. You taking the kid out for Halloween this year? What's the plan?
Yeah, I mean, we might. Our town hasn't canceled it, so we're going to give it a go.
We're doing the same. We're going to do, obviously we don't have any kids, thankfully, but what we're going to do is put little candy, and we put them in little bags, right? And then just lay them out on a table up front and then kind of replenish as kids come up so we can limit that interaction as much as possible.
Right. Because,
2020, everything is horrible. But let's have some fun and start off with a clip from It's a Borat. I'm terrified, Matt, that the accent's going to come back into play again. Like a new generation is now going to extend.
You're going to hear a lot of, it's nice.
Yes. And my wife, which I still do to this day. So good for me.
14 years ago, I released MovieFilm, which brought great shame to Kazakhstan. But now I was instructed to return to Yankee Land to carry out secret mission. I go to America! Borat! What do you say? No, it's not me.
Borat, come back!
People may recognize my face. I would need disguises.
This man is sex criminal? No, no sex criminal.
I will take this to be a fat like American man.
Yeah? This is a good one. Where is his crumb? What is problem, officer?
Got somebody that's strapped to the top of your car. He's in that passenger seat, boss.
Only men and bears are allowed inside car.
Matt Borat is back. Just in time or way too soon?
Way too soon. Yeah, I don't think it's way too soon. I enjoyed the original Borat movie, didn't you?
I did very much so. I remember laughing so hard I cried watching that first film. So yes. Mm-hmm. Are you happy back though? Is it with everything that's going on? So clearly Cohen has a I should say Baron Cohen, right? Has a message he's trying to make with this film. Although I think the first one had a bit of a message, it was still more about the gags and the jokes, right? And the making fun of stuff. So, but I think this one clearly seems to have more of a direct message. And does this work? Is this the right time for this? Or do we need this social commentary right now? Or should we have gone back to more kind of the jokey stuff? Or what are your thoughts about Borat 2 here?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think we need the social commentary right now, I would say definitely yes. The more, the better. It's such a nightmare-esque show here in the U.S. if you're of a particular political persuasion or even just a normal human being who's somewhat decent, that, we can take...
I think, Matt, look at you.
So let's be real here. It's less than a week from the U.S. election, and you're already hearing stories about how Biden has hundreds of lawyers to challenge, Trump if he tries to pull some shenanigans, and they're making all these positionings, and people are worried that Barr is going to try and do something. So, it's just the early part of 1984 that you didn't get to read. That's basically what's happening right now. But anyway, yeah, I think this time is perfectly right for political commentary. Now, I haven't seen.
So does it work?
I think so. Now, I will say I'm with you. I thought the original Borat was so damn funny. Like, it was really one of the funniest movies I had seen in a really, really long time. I didn't really get that with this. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but I didn't laugh as hard as this time around as I did the first time. And I don't know if that's because I'm more used to Cohen's shtick or if there's less jokes per minute. Or if it just was like his costumes were less successful. It just seemed like there was a lot less to me of like the kind of interaction with a mark that I think was so successful the first time. A lot of it, I think, was more, for lack of a better term, story beat oriented.
I think that's an accurate way to describe it. I think this is a more successful film than the original because it seems to be telling a more kind of cohesive. It's a more cohesive and complete endeavor. When last time we're kind of just going from, as you say, mark to mark to really exploit as much humor and funny out of it as we can. We're actually telling a real through line story here, and not so much about exposing kind of the moral rot at the center of a lot of this country's politics, but also just embracing too family, right? And I mean, there's an actual emotional journey that the Borat character goes on in this film, and it's gonna sound weird, but there's an authenticity to this film that you just don't have in the original. You actually, I think, instead of just trying to catch my breath from laughing, which I did do. I mean, I laughed a lot in this film. I agree with you, not as much as I did in the first, but there's more. It's a more interesting experience, right? I think maybe the first one, part of the gags, and I think maybe people don't get it so much, is they look at it as a criticism of a foreign culture, right? They think, well, we're making fun of Borat in Kazakhstan and stuff, when really that's not what's happening at all. Is it a funny character with a weird accent? The fact that he's supposed to be from Kazakhstan, though he speaks Hebrew the whole time.
Hebrew and Polish, yeah.
But still, it's I don't know. I think it's very, very successful. So I think it's an improvement on the original. And there may have been some lag. Maybe some scenes may have run a little longer than they needed to. But overall, I think that it's very successful. Do you think that this is going to kind of capture the lightning that the original film did, Matt? Do you think this will have a lasting influence? Do you think we'll be hearing more of those Borat accents in pop culture again now?
I don't know. I don't think, just by the fact that this isn't in theaters and it's available to a lot of people, I don't know. It's harder to tell right now because everybody's kind of trapped in their own house. You can't really, go to work and hear the office person kind of like saying this just all over the place. It's not like we're long outside of school, so I don't know if anybody's saying that either. Sure. There. So it's harder to gauge those kinds of things. I did read a thing where it said that more people have watched this than watched Mulan. So that's something, I guess.
Well, they didn't have to pay extra money to watch it either.
That's very true.
I'm sure more people have Prime than Disney Plus. But
yeah. So I think, I think it's definitely gotten the attention of the populace as a whole. I think everybody who saw it wanted to see it. I think it was generally well received. The Rudy Giuliani thing kind of flashed and went really quick. So
everything
I don't
seems to nowadays.
Yeah. I was surprised at how little of a wave that created. Like once the thing was released, like it just moved on to the next thing, which is just sad in so many ways.
Sign of the times, I think.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think you're right though. I mean, even though this is less funny film, I think it's overall much more successful. I thought Maria Bakalova as his daughter Tuta is fantastic, and at the very least, I thought the debutante ball thing was just chef's kiss, delightful. It was so damn funny.
No, I agree. I think the introduction of Bakalova as his daughter adds this. That's what provides us our real emotional hook in this film. That's what grounds us, really. And she steals the show. I mean, she is fantastic in this, and she's able to stay with Sacha Baron Cohen. She's able to, keep up with him throughout this entire experience, which, from what I understand, she's a Bulgarian actress, and that's what she's speaking in the film as well, as Bulgarian.
Right. And of course, you'll notice that she sounds much more like, just even to my untrained ear, I'm like, that sounds like a much more Eastern European, former Soviet bloc type sound than what Baron Cohen's doing.
Exactly. But I think it's just, she really adds something to this film. And like I said, the fact that she's able to keep pace with him is really impressive because he's been doing this for decades, right? And I'm not sure. I know she's been an actress in Bulgaria, but I don't know if she's been doing this kind of satire, costume character work for basically her entire life. So it was really impressive. And I think really one of the big things for the film for me is, though it is very funny at times too, it's very angering and sad having to watch some of this stuff play out and experiencing what a lot of these people think his targets, basically what they're going through. That's the big dichotomy I keep in my head with all of this stuff happening in the country right now too, just to get slightly political, is you get angry, like, how can people think this way? But then I feel, well, I think about why they do, right? And what experiences may have led them to this, and I get sad about it. Though I understand that there's roughly there's a professor, I'm blanking on his name, that basically said 20% of the population are right-wing authoritarians, and there's just no way to get to those people. I don't know. Back to the film, though. I think it's exceptionally successful. It's very well done, and I really enjoyed it. I'm really interested to see the deleted scenes. So supposedly there's some interactions with Trump as well as Trump Jr.
Oh, okay.
And also Bakalova gets interviewed by Chanel Rion of OAN. I'm not familiar if you know who she is. She's the one that McEnany in the press, the White House constantly brings into the press briefings, even though she's been banned. They invite her as a special guest because she always asks really softball questions. Like, why is President Trump so wonderful at his job? That type of stuff is what she asks, right? So there's an interview between her and Bakalova, which I'm desperate to see. So either way, very successful. Lots of fun. It's very nice. I give Borat 2 a B+.
You know what? I give Borat a B+ as well. Like you said, it's very nice, but it's not as nice as the first one.
Yeah, it's not the laugh or riot thing is, but it's still very, very good and well worth your time. It is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. If you've seen it, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt, I want to ask you a quick question before we move on to the physical media picks. There's two things of interest I thought about this. First, supposedly Prime bought Borat 2 for $80 million.
Okay.
Which is the highest payoff yet for any of these theatrical releases that have been shipped to a streaming service.
Right.
The first film it cost $18 million. It made $263 million.
Yeah.
Right? This one cost, it says, roughly $10 to $20 million. Do you think 80 mil makes sense? Is that a fair price? And do you think Amazon's going to make that back, however those calculations are even made?
Yeah, I think 80 million is a fair price. I think they will make it back. Amazon's a weird company. It's really hard to tell just because, Amazon's all about getting scale of like users and products, and they'll run these razor thin margins of profit just on everything they do, just so they can get people in the door, which is scary when you really think about it. Because at some point, I think they're planning on being like even more of a monolith than they are. And then they can be like, aha, what are you going to do now, American public? But I'm with you. I don't understand how Amazon or Hulu or Netflix, how they make any money on any of these things. How do they, are they really pulling in new subscribers? I really don't know. Maybe if they start getting rid of things like free trials where people can't just like watch it for whatever and they have to subscribe for at least a month. Maybe, but I don't really understand how they make money on these things. It's beyond me.
I don't know either. I think it was interesting. Do you think any other big films are going to follow this method now? I mean, some of the other smaller stuff has, and the indie stuff, but like there were talks that the Bond film, they wouldn't even discuss going to a streaming service. I think it was Apple and was it Disney? But the Bond folks, Eon wanted $400 million to go straight to streaming.
That seems insane to me. So I don't think anybody's going to buy that much. But honestly, Disney's in trouble. They're not doing well. I mean, granted, they have all the money in the world, but at the same time, that only lasts so long because their parks are not open. Any of their billion-dollar movies, or none of them are hitting the theaters. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we even see some Marvel movies, but people still would have to pay for, which I think would be a lot more of a. I think people would actually do, versus something like Mulan.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Fair enough. All right. Interesting. Shoot us an email, folks. What do you think about that, too? What are your thoughts about the big blockbusters starting to hit streaming services if the theaters continue to be either closing or to be just limping along? Like AMC, they got money for the rest of the year. After that, who knows what's going to happen? Still haven't canceled my A-list yet, though. Still haven't done it. I haven't been there in 2 months.
I finally did. I figured at this point, it's very unlikely we get any movies before April at this point, just because we're going through the cold season in a lot of the country. So on the off chance we have to go see something in the theater, I'll just suck it up and pay the ticket price, I guess.
I think Freaky is still going to come out, which I do want to see, which is that Freaky Friday horror film. Mm-hmm. But either way. All right. Let's spend a few minutes, Matt, and talk about what's coming up on physical media this upcoming Tuesday, November 3rd.
Well, hi. Don't you look beautiful? Are you going to the 49th floor, too?
Shh. You'll get in trouble for talking.
I'll get in trouble for talking? Okay. Shh.
There's Janelle Monáe and the much maligned, though I think I still want to see it, Antebellum, Matt. I was looking forward to seeing this film, though it just is not reviewing well. And of course, perfectly timed for the Halloween horror rush coming out on November 3rd. Monet plays successful author Veronica, who finds herself trapped in a horrifying reality and must uncover the mind-bending mystery before it's too late. Includes a Dolby Atmos audio track, deconstructing Antebellum, a 2-part documentary on the making of the film, some deleted scenes, and more. I Am Woman, which is a biopic about the musician and activist Helen Reddy from the 1970s. Scream is giving us Let's Scare Julie. And the write-up reads, no synopsis for Let's Scare Julie. Misbehavior, a group of women hatch a plan to disrupt the 1970 Miss World beauty competition in London. Maggie Q and Daniel Putty star in The Argument. A couple get into an argument at their cocktail party that escalates until it brings an abrupt end to the festivities. They and their guests decide to recreate the entire night again and again to determine who was right. Higher Love, a blue-collar worker tries to rescue his pregnant, heroin-addicted girlfriend from the notorious streets of Camden, New Jersey, and her close-knit group of drug users. Once their son is born, he forces her to choose between her life with her drug family and one with him and their child. Sounds hilarious. New to Blu-ray, Arrow is releasing Lake Michigan Monster. All aboard the combined spirits of H.P. Lovecraft's early Sam Raimi and Mystery Science Theater 3000 inhabit this action-packed tale of nautical daring-do and monster mayhem, which was the winner of the Audience Award for Best International Feature of the 2019 Fantasia Film Festival. On the shores of Lake Michigan, Matt, the eccentric Captain Seafield, wow, really? Seafield? Enlists a colorful crew of misfits in a bid to slay the hellish sea monster that prowls the murky depths. But as Seafield's obsession with exacting revenge on the creature that killed his father threatens to consume him, can weapons expert Sean Shaughnessy, sonar whiz Nedge Pepsi, and former Navy nautical athletes, Venture Unit Officer Dick Flynn, hold the show together? I'm really liking these names. It's shot gloriously, Matt, in retro black and white on a shoestring budget. Includes a high-definition transfer, original lossless audio, 2 cast and crew audio commentaries, a critic's audio commentary, effects breakdown, interviews, and more. Warner Archive is releasing The Mortal Storm. The Roth family led a quiet life in small village in German Alps during the early 1930s. When the Nazis come to power, the family is divided, and Martin Nittner, a family friend, is caught up in the turmoil. 4K releases, Matt. V for Vendetta is getting its 4K release. I don't think I need to upgrade this. I have it on Blu-ray, the Wachowski sisters film. I don't think I've watched it once since I bought it on Blu-ray when it first came out. Mm-hmm. You get it from Best Buy, you get a steel book. There's also a gift set that kind of looks like the cell that he was trapped in. And then there is a Game of Thrones complete series Best Buy Steelbook set. Looks really sharp, actually. Aesthetically, it looks really cool. So you can pick that up. Your straight-to-DVD pick of the week, Hard Kill. The work of billionaire CEO Donovan Chalmers is so valuable that he hires mercenaries to protect it. And a terrorist group kidnaps his daughter to get it. This film does not star Steven Seagal, so I don't get it. Matt, what should we be streaming this week?
So since this is our official last show before Halloween, I'm going to recommend 2 different horror films, both on Amazon Prime. First, if you're looking for something lean, mean, kind of a creature feature kind of thing, I'm going to recommend Alexander Asia's Crawl, which is about a woman and her estranged father get trapped in the crawl space under their house during a hurricane. They are menaced by the world's deadliest alligators because all of Florida is trying to kill you all the time. And that includes most of the people. So
and it's got Barry Pepper, too. I always like to see Barry Pepper.
It does have Barry Pepper, yes. If you want something a little more cerebral and surreal, I know I've recommended it before, but I'm going to recommend it again. Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, about 2 lighthouse keepers that are secluded on an island by themselves in the late 1800s, early 1900s, some indeterminate turn of the century time, is streaming available on Amazon Prime as well. That is a much, much weirder and challenging but rewarding experience.
Yeah, it's not your traditional horror film. So if you're going into that looking for it's different. I think it's great as well, but it is a different experience. I've been working my way through the Friday the 13th collection from Scream Factory, that big box set.
Yeah, how's that been going?
It's been good. I've been enjoying it. The pictures look great. The features are great. I'm actually about halfway through part 5 now, A New Beginning, which of course is the one where Jason's not even in it. But it's been a fun trip down memory lane. So there you go.
I don't think I've seen, other than the first one and the second one, and then the remake in 2009, I don't think I've seen any of those like all the way through. I think I've seen like bits and pieces of all. I was never a big fan. Like I know a lot of horror fans have a lot of affection for the cheesy sequels in a lot of these series, especially from the 80s and early 90s, but I'm not one of those people. I have very little tolerance for it, you know.
I think the fourth one is maybe my favorite of that run, which is the one with Corey Feldman.
Okay.
Because it's actually pretty brutal. What's funny, though, is watching the slash scenes, you know, kind of the cut gore, and the director's like, oh, yeah, that's too gruesome. Yeah, I'm glad we didn't include that. You know, it's like, come on, that's what everybody's here for. And this fifth part is really, I mean, it's like a PG-13 horror film. It's not really that intense at all, besides being very boring. Oh, well. But yeah, Jason was always my guy. Out of all the big iconic characters, I don't know what it is. Just relentlessness. He's no joking around. He's not, you know, cracking wise. And I really hate some of those Halloween movies too. After part 3, it's really downhill for me.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any of the ones after part 3 all the way through either. I don't even think I've seen H2O even all the way through.
We did do the David Gordon Green one for the show.
We did, yes, we did, yes. I mean, there's some I've seen. I've seen Rob Zombies, unfortunately, so.
I've been thinking about revisiting those, too, because, I don't know, I remember hating that second one. Like, it was just so mean and cruel that just everybody was in that film simply to suffer, and there was no real enjoyment I got out of that movie, so I'm like, maybe I should revisit it. Maybe I was just feeling particularly sensitive that day. I don't know.
Maybe. I know, it's funny you say that, because I was thinking about revisiting, I don't know why, the various Texas Chainsaw remakes and reboots that are like late, you know, late 2000s. I remember most of those being not good, but I haven't seen, I think, a couple of them. So now I just kind of want to suffer and sit through those and see if they're as bad as I remember.
I think they are. I'm pretty sure they are. The other thing, too, I don't get about Zombies Run, I just don't think works, is spending so much time on like young Michael or as him in the asylum or whatever. They spend too much time on that. Part of the success was the mysteriousness, how, you know, when the mask goes on, Michael Myers disappears and it's now just the shape. And anyway, I could talk about this for an hour. All right, let's go ahead, Matt, and spend a few minutes talking about the latest film in our makeshift marathon of horror anthologies, the Mortuary Collection.
This is one serious collection of books you've got here.
The mere tip of a looming, lumbering iceberg, I'm afraid. An archive of the various ways in which clients have found themselves passing through our hallowed halls.
So these are all stories about how people died?
Not just how, my dear. Why?
That's pretty cool.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Tell me one.
Tell you one what?
A story. Something dark and twisted. I don't know, something awesome.
So, Matt, do they share any stories that are dark, twisted, and awesome? How successful is this anthology film? Well, let me set it up, right? Because we have a young woman, Sam, who infiltrates this mortuary, and she's desperate. Well, what she's trying to do really is get a job, right? Supposedly with our Montgomery Dark, our mortuary owner, administrator, you know, the guy there played by Clancy Brown. You may know him as the Kurgan. There's a bunch of other stuff too. Very kind of famous character actor. So he then goes on to share with her different stories, which of course is what builds and binds our Mortuary Collection anthology film. All right, Matt. How is it? How does it work? How successful is this film? What do you think? And we can run through each segment if you'd like as well.
Okay. So overall, I think it's pretty successful. This film, we've seen a lot of horror anthologies, and to me, a lot of the segments of these things follow particular story beats, and this is no different. I mean, you have the guy, who's being punished for his mistreatment of women kind of thing, his comeuppance that way, and the cheating or the unfaithful lover in some way. There's all of that, and I even think they even call it out in the framing story in between. We're like, wow, this is all. This is nothing I haven't seen before, which is true. But I think for the most part, they're done okay at the very least to, pretty effective in some of the stories. I thought it was a relatively decent film. I had a good time watching it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that works for me as well. So I enjoyed some of the segments, and it is more successful than some of the stuff we've seen as of late. Absolutely. I don't think it's as good as, say, a Trick or Treat. I think that thing is actually one of the better horror anthologies of the past 10, 15 years. It's solid. It's definitely a solid, entertaining film. I'm trying to break down which of the segments I think I like the most. So this first segment, which is a little shorter, right, is about this young woman who is a bit of a con person, and she is robbing some people at a party, and she goes to the restroom and she starts going through stuff and then finds maybe something in the medicine cabinet. Very Lovecraftian, I think, but short and efficient. Very well done. I think that was one of the stronger entries. What do you think about that bathroom thief portion?
Yeah, I liked it. It was kind of like it didn't really have a story per se. I mean, it was really it was just really quick and nasty, and it was done. It felt it was almost hard to describe it as a story or an entry in the story of the anthology. It was almost like a prologue.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Part 2, the frat boy pregnancy.
Yeah.
I found that one to be pretty enjoyable, a bit over the top, I think, which was the whole point, but fun. I really had a lot of fun with that one. What did you think of that one?
Yeah, I mean, it was done well. I mean, like I said, this is one of the things you're going to see in about 80% of the horror anthologies. It's not groundbreaking in its message or anything like that, but it's done pretty well. I thought it was pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Although I would have liked to have gotten more about the monster, personally.
Yeah, they may have to kind of dove in more into what's happening and why. Mm-hmm. May have been interesting, but still, fair enough. Part 3 is the one I struggle with the most. It seems to have the most kind of atmospherics, aesthetically the most, I don't know how to describe it, just the most experimental, I think, out of the group, really. And the problem I have with it is, didn't we just see this in an episode of Creepshow? Right?
Did we?
Well, there's a guy in an elevator trying to get rid of a body, right?
Oh, honestly, I blocked out most of Creepshow. That did not leave a lasting impression on me on that show.
I remember a woman being trapped in an elevator and they couldn't get out, and there was things in a
Oh,
crate
yeah. I remember that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think this is a little different. The kind of end final scare of this I thought was really effective. I thought it looked really cool, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of an overlong segment for the kind of payoff. It really depends on what you really prefer. I mean, do you kind of look at these kind of, psychological kind of horrors, supernatural horrors, or do you want more of the slashing, gore, brutal killing type of horror?
True. Fair enough. And then number 4, which then bleeds into our framing device as well, which is the babysitter that has to ward off the psychotic killer type thing, which I think doesn't work as well for me. The problem is I identified what was happening basically after a couple minutes in. I think it maybe telegraphs its results way too early. I don't know if it's just some bad choices by the writer or director of that particular segment, whatever the case may be, but it's effective in what it tries to do, but for me, it was unfortunately diminished by the fact that I knew exactly what was happening. Did you figure that one out too, or?
Oh yeah, I mean it's not anything earth shattering. I think it's it's one of those ideas that's too clever by half kind of thing. Whereas somebody sits down and like, you know, maybe in a smoky haze said, man, this would be a great idea for a little short film, and they put it down and I think they're super clever, but it's only just an okay idea. I mean, I think it's not bad. I mean, and I guess I want to just kind of reiterate the rest of this. I mean, we've seen some bad anthology films.
Very true.
None of these are bad.
No, I agree.
They're just you know, middling at worst.
I would agree. And I will say it really owns its dark ending. It goes for it at the end, which I did not expect. So at least that way, that particular segment does redeem itself. I think maybe, I don't know, I just feel like the big scene, though, is tripped up by, I think, its obvious dodge, what it's trying to do. Kind of lessens the impact of it. So what do you think generally about our main leads, though, Caitlin Custer and Clancy Brown? I think Clancy Brown is pretty good in this. I think he's suitably creepy, and he channels, you know, Phantasm's tall man, the Angus Scrimm thing. He seems to be that's what he's going for here. And I think they're both quite good in this. I enjoyed them. I think overall, as we said, the film is successful. But what did you think overall about this, particularly that framing device and Clancy Brown there?
I always like seeing Clancy Brown. I mean, I think, you know, like you said, he's one of the better character actors out there. And, you know, he can always bring a certain kind of scenery chewing funness to anything that he's in. So, you know, I enjoyed him. The actress I wasn't particularly familiar with, but I thought she did a good enough job paired next up to him. You know, the framing device was decent. It wasn't as, again, not as incompetent or as lame as a lot of the ones we see. So, you know, it was pretty good.
Yeah, fair enough. So, Matt, overall, I decided to give the Mortuary Collection a B-. What about you?
That is exactly what I decided to give it as well. I think it's a little bit above C material, but it's just hanging on by its, you know, its fingernails onto a B-.
I agree. If you've had a chance to see the Mortuary Collection, which is currently streaming on Shudder, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. It's TFR Libs time, Matt. This is our fill in the blank game, and it's going to be all horror this time. And I'm actually going to bring back a little something we just talked about a minute ago. So let's take a listen.
Tommy's gone. It's hard to believe. It was a good idea not to let your little brother come to the funeral.
Hey, I don't like this place.
Something weird is going on up
The
there.
funeral is about to begin, sir.
What's wrong with you?
There's something up there. I saw it.
You got some kind of an overactive imagination or something?
I know you're not gonna believe this, but these things were here.
Oh, give me a break. Okay, I believe you.
What we gotta do is lay that sucker out flat and drive a stake right through his goddamn heart.
Matt, how familiar are you with Don Coscarelli's Phantasm film series?
Not at all. I haven't not seen a single one of them. They're on my things to catch up with. I just haven't seen any of them.
I think they're fun. I enjoyed most of them. There's a certain, I don't know how to call it. They're just odd, but really at times very scary and a lot of fun. So that's my first fill in the blank for you, Matt, is the best horror franchise is blank.
Oh, boy. That's a toughie. The best horror franchise.
And we can make it to, like, you need a minimum. What do you want to add some qualifiers? Like, you need a minimum of 3 films? Or
yeah, I think you have to have at least 3 films to be considered a franchise. Boy, what are the best horror franchises?
I mean, your classics. So your classics, right? Your Nightmares on Elm Street, your Friday the 13th, your Halloween. You can throw in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What else do we got here? Would Alien count?
See, I was leaning towards that. I'm thinking it might be Alien, because Alien is definitely a horror movie. Aliens is more of an action movie. It's more of a horror action movie, I would say. It's
science fiction action is what I would call Aliens. Personally.
Yeah. but it's still scary.
Covenant, I think, is a horror
Yeah.
film. I don't know. Prometheus is more of a sci-fi thriller.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
That's tough. You know what? I'm gonna go outside the box. I think so. As much as I love Nightmare on Elm Street and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think those are both elevated so much by how good the first entry is and just how middling everything else is. And that's being generous. But those first entries in both of those series are just so good. I may actually go with, just for overall quality, and I may regret this, and you ask me again this question in like 3 or 5 years on this show, maybe the Conjuring series. I don't think they're great, but I think a lot of them are really solid. And I'm including like the Annabelle, like adjacent ones, because Annabelle Creation I think is one we really enjoyed, but the first one was pretty good too. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with for now. It would either be that or Alien, unless I can think of something better later.
No, what about Evil Dead?
See, here's the thing. I like Evil Dead, but I was never an Evil Dead super fan, like a lot of people are.
Like me.
Yeah, like you.
And don't forget, you got your Child's Plays. What about kind of modern stuff? All right, I guess would you go still with The Conjuring? Because what are your more modern ones? You have Saw?
Nah. No Hostel.
No Hostel.
No Saw. No Hostel. Yeah, I guess I would still go with Conjuring. That's the only thing I can think of that's a modern quote unquote franchise.
That's interesting. I don't know if the Conjurings have been pretty good, but some of them, man, are just like almost all the Annabelle films, but one of them is abysmal. And The Nun is bad.
Yeah, that's true.
The Christopher Lauren is not good.
Okay.
It's a lot of them just aren't. What was that one it was The Nun that was just abysmal. That thing was horrible. You basically have 2 rock solid Conjuring films, 1 good Annabelle film, and I think that's about it for me.
Yeah, see, the problem is you could say that about any of the classic, film series. I mean, despite anybody's affection for it, and I know there's a lot of affection for it, those Friday the 13th films, 99% of them are not good. I mean, they're not good. Even the first one's not great. Like, I don't understand what's so great about the first one, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
Scream, maybe?
Maybe.
Hellraiser? Night of the Living Dead. How about that? I'm going to go with Night of the Living Dead. The Romero's Dead series. All of those are pretty solid.
You know what? I think that's it. I was trying to figure out what to go with myself, and I think that may be it. Consistently, I mean, Romero's first 3 films are all great. Now, the third one, Day of the Dead, is probably the most middling of the bunch.
Right.
But it also has the best gore effects out of any of them.
Yeah.
And then the newer ones he did are still pretty good as well, like Land of the Dead.
Yep.
Though the what's the one that what's the name of the
Diary
one?
of the Dead?
Yeah, that one is
not great.
But yeah, I think you're right. It may be the Night of the Living Dead series, Romero's series. And then, too, you have your spawn-offs, too, right? The Return of the Living Dead by Dan O'Bannon. Those first 2 are great. The remake of Night of the Living Dead that Savini did, that one's good, too. So I think that's it. I think that's your winner.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, don't forget Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake, which it's divisive. But at the time, I thought it was quite effective when I first saw it.
Well, that opening is great.
Yeah, the first 20 minutes is great, yes.
So, yeah, I think you're right about that. Interesting. You know what? That is their correct answer. Fair enough.
We got there. We got there eventually.
Yep. Good times. What do you got?
All right, so for some reason I was kind of doing some research for this segment, and I saw an article on Vincent Price. So I wanted to get your commentary on him. Vincent Price films are blank.
Oh, they're great. I love Vincent Price movies. Fall of the House of Usher, House on Haunted Hill, all of that stuff. I'm a big House of Wax. I have a weird affection for House of Wax. I'm not quite sure why, but it's really like that one. But absolutely. I think that I love most of his work, and I'm very excited that a bunch of his films popped up on Shudder, because I was about to drop like $50 for that set that's currently out from Scream Factory re-release of that first box set. and maybe I will at some point. It's just that I blew my movie budget on that Friday the 13th set.
Right.
But I think there's something he brings to his films, right? Because he's charismatic and creepy all at the same time, and he's always just having a blast with whatever he's doing. So I think he's great. What about you?
I would say he's charmingly cheesy for the most part. I think I think the ones you rattled off are like stone cold classics, and I think people who are horror fans or did want to get more deeper into that kind of stuff should watch those. But be aware that probably 80% of what he puts out is schlocky, and it really depends on how your tolerance for camp kind of things. So,
no, I think that's fair. All right, Matt. The best final girl is blank.
Oh, that seems like such a layup. I got to go with Jamie Lee Curtis. She's the best one. She's like the original.
That was my initial jump, but then I thought about, well, what about Sigourney Weaver?
Yeah. But by what Ripley becomes as we progress through that series, it doesn't seem like a fair assessment of what the typical quote unquote final girl.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm still going with Jamie Lee.
I think you're right that it's Jamie Lee Curtis as well, especially considering, though the film itself I think is just okay. I think she's a lot of fun and great in the David Gordon Green Halloween film from a couple years ago. So I think I'm inclined to give it to her as well. Yeah. I mean, it is a bit of an obvious layup of a question, isn't it? Any other good ones, though? I mean, besides...
Good ones. Well, I guess there's... How do you feel about... I don't know. Nev Campbell?
Nev would be good.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. I also like Christy from the Hellraiser films. I'm always a big fan of hers. Jess Bradford, Olivia Hussey, and Black Christmas, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
You have Nancy, right, from Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't know. But yeah, I guess those would be the big top 4 or 5, whatever, how many numbers I just rattled off. So... But I think, Sidney Prescott's a good one, too, from Scream. That's a rock-solid choice.
I was watching... I caught New Nightmare the other day. Still really good.
Yeah, I haven't watched that since it came out. I need to revisit some of those Nightmare on Elm Street films, too. I remember watching the first one when I was a kid, and it just scared the pants off of me. Yeah, that scene when he's walking down the alley, and his arms just continue to stretch out.
Yeah.
Oh... That thing terrified me. All right, what do you got?
All right, so in honor of our recent marathon, the best horror anthology is...
Well, we're still going to do one next week.
Right.
All right, we're doing an Amicus film.
I feel pretty confident it's not going to leap to the front of the list of best horror anthology of all time.
That's fair. So of all time?
Yeah, the best one you could watch. If someone had said, I want to watch a good horror anthology... which is the one that you would throw out if they've never seen any of them?
I really, really like those old British films. Like the original Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror. But then you got like Creepshow, which is a lot of fun. Trilogy of Terror is great, right? Black Sabbath. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to go with Black Sabbath. Are you familiar with Black Sabbath?
Yeah, I think I'm the one who turned you on to it. It was one my dad told me about, scared him when he was so young that I had to go watch it out when I first saw it because he talked about how much it terrified him.
Yeah, so it's Mario Bava's film from, let me pull this up here, 63 is when it was first released in Italy. And that one, it's got that kind of 60s aesthetic to it, but it's also very, as Matt said, it's very scary. And the makeup effects and stuff, especially with that woman, like the dead woman in the apartment or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I get a chill just thinking about that now. And it's the framing device is hosted by Boris Karloff, which is great. So, but you need to watch the original Italian version because the U.S. version released here has a lot of cuts to it. Particularly in one of the segments, like from what I understand, too. Not from what I understand, I own it. There's kind of some homoerotic undertones between two women in the relationship that is basically excised entirely from the U.S. cut, and a little more some added scares, gore stuff that's cut as well. So you'll want to get that original Italian version of the film because there's 2 versions available for you to buy, and you want to get that Italian version. So let me see here. Which is I want to be able to tell people which one to get. So why don't you talk about it though too, or then actually tell me what your favorite one is.
Yeah, I think the thing that I went into Black Sabbath hearing about was the woman in the apartment thing. That's the thing that traumatized my dad, into his adult years. I think it actually is available on one of the streaming services. I'm not sure which version it is, but I think it's on Shudder. I think. Yeah.
Okay. So here it is. It's AIP is the version you do not want. All right. Okay. That's the US version. You want the one, and it lists it. Like if you go on Amazon, it actually lists AIP. You want the standard edition from Kino. That's part of the Mario Bava collection. The AIP version is the cut one. Do not get that one. And they're both available for basically $15-$16. So I would buy that one. I'm serious. It's worth it. You'll want to check that one out.
Okay. I would probably go something a little bit more modern. Yeah, so Black Sabbath, for anybody who doesn't want to buy it as their first go around, don't want to blind buy it despite Chris's glowing recommendation, it is available on Canopy and Shudder for your viewing pleasure if you have either of those available to you.
But again, I think it's going to be the AIP version that's available and not the uncut version. So
okay. All right, so I'm going to go a little bit more modern. I'm surprised I would say this, but just kind of racking my brain for the answer to this question, I couldn't think of anything much better that was horror. As much as I love Creepshow, it is kind of cheesy in some parts, so I'm gonna go with Trick or Treat. I think it's a really good, like, perfect Halloween film that it's up there for, like, if you're looking for Halloween films to watch on the night, I think that one's a really solid choice, and I think you should check it out. And it's available on streaming platforms as well.
No, that's pretty solid. And also want to recommend too, I think the first VHS is really good.
Yeah.
But out of the entire VHS series, part 2, Safe Haven by Garth Evans is the best thing that series has ever done. That thing is terrifying and it's exceptionally well done. So if you haven't seen that, you'll want to check that out as well. But I like Trick or Treat a lot. That is a good one, so that's fair. Good. All right, Matt. Well, here it is then. The best horror film of the last 20 years, 2000 to 2020, is blank.
The best horror film of the last 20 years. The last 10 years, you said, or 20 years?
20. 2000 to today.
Chris, that is such a large span. I know I'm going to be forgetting something because I got to really sit with that question. So my initial immediate gut reaction would say It Follows. I can't remember a film that I enjoyed from beginning to end as much as I enjoyed It Follows. And it really pisses me off to anybody who's listening to this, to people who incorrectly say that is not a good film. It angers me to my very soul that people have now suddenly turned on that film by saying it's boring. It drives me crazy because you're just wrong. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. I love, which I think is the 3rd or 4th time I've said that this episode, but I love It Follows. I also am a big fan of Audition, Takashi Miike's film, though it may be, I don't want to use the term slow, but it's got a very deliberate build up to an ending that just knocks you on your butt. I also am a big fan of Neil Marshall's The Descent, which is really good. You're a big fan of Let the Right One In, as am I. That one's solid. Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. Mm-hmm. You like Let Me In, right? A lot.
I do like Let Me In. I think they both are worth your time. I really do think they're both worth your time. I think they have a very different approach to the same material, and I think they both have something different to say. So I wouldn't dismiss one or the other. I also really liked the Aja's remake of The Hills of Eyes, which I thought was very, very effective.
I just rewatched that actually a week or 2 ago, and that one still holds up very well. You have The Babadook was really strong as well. 28 Days Later. Ty West's House of the Devil is fantastic if you haven't seen it.
Too, yeah.
What else? Oh, one of my favorites. I mean, you have your Rings, The Orphanage, if you haven't seen as well. If you like scary kids, Orphanage is your go-to of the past 20 years. But the French, if you want something really brutal and unrelenting, the French film Inside is like a first-run favorite, I think. That one is just an intense watch through your fingers, watch through your hands, covering your face type of film.
Yeah.
And that thing will just stick with you. It is so disturbing. But in the end, Matt, I think it follows. It's tight between Audition and It Follows for me.
Yeah.
But I think It Follows ends up winning because of that just incredible 80s synth score. And just it does have that unrelenting sense of dread throughout the entire film. You never know. It's really, the past 20 years, out of all the horror films we've watched, when I describe it to people to this day, I get goosebumps. Just talking about it. And I think in the end, that's why it's the best one.
Such a good movie. I would wholeheartedly agree with everything Chris said, except for if you're going to go with a French New Wave horror film, as good as Inside is, I personally found Martyrs to be much more disturbing. So I would choose Martyrs personally, but different type of scares, whereas Inside is more of a kind of pursuit, adrenaline rush kind of thing. Martyrs is like this crushing despair and like, why are you watching this kind of thing? So it really depends on what you're in the mood for.
Sure.
So
it's very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there you go, folks. Your Halloween night programming is done. If you want to watch something relatively new, you can pick any of the films we just talked about. So good times. Matt, close this out.
All right. So in the time of Rona, here we are. So with films coming out, not getting major theatrical releases, and a lot of things going straight to streaming services, or even just going on to on-demand rentals, horror, a very small, generally underappreciated genre, in the time of Corona, the current state of horror is blank.
I'm not sure, because you'd think horror would. All right, so there's two. I'm not sure, because the problem is, like comedies, horror films are best experienced in a theater with an audience, I think.
Right.
Because there's that communal feel that just kind of infiltrates the entire theater. I think this is a perfect atmosphere for horror. I just don't know of any ones see, here's the problem is nothing's popping in my head that we've seen this year that's been great. But the problem is I could apply that to the entire spectrum of films for the most part this year.
Our best of the year is going to be a very interesting stretchy list. Maybe The Lodge might have been the best one.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. And from what I understand too, that Zoom call one, I can't remember the name of it now, is supposed to be really good.
Okay.
It's kind of like Unfriended. But it's either way. I think a lot of great horror is going to come out of this. I'll bet you we'll probably see a lot of good pandemic type thrillers over the next year, when if things abate a little bit, maybe some good zombie stuff. But I think the current status of horror is basically treading water. Yeah,
I'm gonna say the current status is it's low-key strengthening. Every time I look at the streaming services, with nothing new really coming out. I mean, otherwise you may have some big splash release every month or so, or maybe every few months, like you did with a Borat. But for the most part, a lot of the new releases that come out on streaming services a lot of them are lesser known horror films, whether they're foreign, and maybe they're not brand new, but they're new to the US kind of thing. So I feel like because there's a lack of other things to watch, I just get this hope and this kind of maybe the thinnest of silver lining hopes with all of this ridiculousness is that maybe we were building a whole new relationship of horror fans, because that's what people are being able to watch. There's a lot of things I want to catch up with. I have no idea if any of them are any good or not, but at least there's a lot of them that are coming out, and there's a lot more choice that seems to be out there. By the way, I watched The Books of Blood last night. Not great. Not great, folks. Kind of effective in some parts, but not great. We'll be skipping that one for our anthology series.
Fair enough. And listen, there's some good stuff coming. Mike Flanagan basically is kind of owning the horror world right now too, right? He's got that 2 Haunting series on Netflix. I haven't watched either of them, but I understand they're very good. He did the Shining sequel as well, Dr. Sleep, which I think is very good. I still haven't. I bought it digitally, and I still have it because it includes the director's cut, and I haven't watched that yet. And we can talk maybe about that next week too, Matt. I don't know if you saw that Amazon digital purchase thing that was all over Twitter the last couple days. But that basically you don't actually own a copy of it when you buy it, which is something we've all known anyway for a long time with this stuff. Either way, buy physical media, people. But yeah, so there is some good stuff out there. It's just, yeah, I think just like everything else, we're just stuck right now. Yay!
Well, now that I've made Chris unduly sad, it doesn't take much.
Not anymore. So next week, folks, we're going to be discussing On the Rocks, the latest Sofia Coppola film, featuring Bill Murray and Rashida Jones. Thank you. And we'll be excited to check that one out. And, of course, we're going to sort of wrap up this mini marathon thing with... finally, Matt is going to watch an Amicus horror film. Right. I love these British Amicus anthologies, and this is one I haven't seen, Asylum, which is currently available on Amazon Prime. So we'll be discussing that as well. And that'll be that. So in the meantime, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Do a search for The First Run. Scroll. Eventually you will find us. Go ahead and go over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. I'll read it on the air and I'll help other people find the show. And that's it, Matt. So why don't we go ahead and take an extended break. Everybody have a fun and safe Halloween. And we'll see you all soon.
I feel bad because I was the one who put the baby in her.
You don't need to feel bad.
I was just trying to give my daughter pleasure, and next thing I know, there's a baby inside her.